morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning.
You forgot to inform the participants that my team is German. I'm very pleased to be here today, and I guess if I'm invited to this LPFN, it's probably for the N, most likely for the P, certainly for the L as well. And many people think that UNEP has nothing to do with food. And my task today in the next 5 minutes is to prove you wrong. N is nature. Nature is the food provider. Food is not provided to Kenyan's people by the Minister of Agriculture. Nature provides fish. Fish is not provided to Kenyan's people by the Minister of Fisheries. Nature provides tourism. Millions of people come to Kenya not to see the CBD of Nairobi, but to see nature. Nature provides health, the air we breathe and that we take for granted. Nature provides water that we drink. Water is not coming from the tap. These bottles of water are not coming from a plant. They are coming from nature. Therefore, in the soup that Tony showed us, the soup of terms that he showed us today, which he reminded me was actually projected here in this very room 2 years ago, I choose to just focus on two terms. One is land use planning, the other one is integration or integrated approach. And I would like to just very briefly fly over 4 main concepts. One is land and water. Many people in this room would say only 4% of agricultural land in Africa is irrigated. What is an agricultural land? Is it the forest that you clear to plant more cereals? What is agricultural land? Is it the pastoral land that you transform into farming lands? And what is agricultural land? Is it the wetlands that you dry up, that you drain to produce more food? We have to fundamentally think about our definitions. And if agricultural land is everything that is irrigable, yes, it is 4%. If agricultural land is the land on which you can produce to feed the billion people of Africa today, 2 billion to come in the next 40 years, then we need to fundamentally rethink about our production systems. We'll come back to that. Africa is has the second highest deforestation rate in the world after South America. So we have to think about what is it that we want to do in trying to feed the billion people in Africa today. No single African country had a net gain in terms of reforestation, deforestation, or afforestation. No single country in Africa had a net gain. What does it mean? We are losing our forest resources. Africa is the continent where you have the highest rate of land acquisition, which is not a bad thing to do if it is done properly. Actually, I call it water acquisitions or water grab rather than land grab, because many of these countries that are coming to acquire land in Africa, they have a lot of land, they have a lot of surface in their countries. What they are lacking is water. Think about the Middle East countries that are coming to invest here. Very briefly, the second aspect I wanted to touch upon is population dynamics. You have to think out of the box. The landscape approach does not mean that you only have to look at the landscape where you want to produce, but actually see the environment in which you are in. outside of Africa. And what solutions are being provided at the moment? Electric fences. Electric fences in our houses here in Nairobi, electric fences in the border between Africa and Europe. And we know that is not a solution. We have to find a solution somewhere else. And these people, they have aspirations, they have ambitions, and they see what is happening elsewhere in the world. How are we going to manage that situation? LPFM, is that the only solution? Or can we think out of the box? The third issue that I would like to very briefly touch upon is the issue of governance. And when I say governance, you can think about budgets, you can think about treasury, but actually political governance is as much important. Economic governance and social governance. Why is it that this continent is the most prone continent for conflicts? Is it that Africans are barbars? Or is it that Africans are more keen on fighting each other? What is the situation? Why is it that the governance systems, traditional governance systems, have been destroyed? By whom? And when? How and when are we going to rebuild these traditional governance systems? Look at the externalities that are contributing to the conflicts we are seeing in Africa. And I will give you a few figures. 90% of major armed conflicts between 1950 and 2000 occurred in biodiversity hotspots. People fight for access to resources. People fight for control of resources. High-value natural resources, be they biodiversity or minerals. You can overlay the map of countries in conflict in Africa with the map of natural resources of Africa. Why people are fighting? Who are the ones that are fighting? And who are the ones that are instigating that fight? As I was coming to this hall, I overheard three people talking to each other, and one of them said that one country that I would not name here, but I heard the name of that country, was apologizing 2 weeks ago for having assassinated the former president of DRC. Why was he killed? We have to think out of the box when we talk about LPFM, because there are many factors that are contributing to the fact that some people in Africa are undernourished or are not fed properly. And this is not necessarily the fault of these populations. So something wrong is happening in this world. Of the 45 fragile states, 80% contain extractive resources of significance to the global economy. 95% of these contain transboundary water resources and biodiversity hotspots. You can ask yourself, why is it that conflicts mostly occur in areas that are rich, either in biodiversity or natural resources? Why is it that many countries in this continent that are the richest in natural resources are actually the poorest in economy? The richer you are, the poorer your populations. Something wrong is happening. And how can you promote agriculture under these conditions? And who is going to do agriculture when people are busy fighting each other or busy fighting over access to natural resources? And the fourth dimension that I would like to touch upon is the agricultural systems. We in UNEP, we are very keen in promoting what we call sustainable consumption and production. 2050. Is it by increasing the agricultural land to be occupied? Is it by increasing the amounts of pesticides that we are pouring on nature? Is it by increasing the irrigation schemes? Is it by increasing the wastewater we actually dump on nature? Is it by increasing the productivity? Or is it by increasing the productivity while at the same time reducing the food loss? If it is true that up to 40% of the food produced by developing 40% loss. People produce just to lose, maybe, I mean, mostly, probably close to half of that production. 40% is a lot. So imagine if we were able to reduce by half the food loss that is produced by African population. The other issue that I would like us to address is the food waste. We are in a bizarre world where up to 900 million people go to bed hungry, and yet 1/3 of the food we produce is wasted. So we have to review fundamentally the production and the consumption patterns, so as to while we increase the productivity, we also reduce the loss and we reduce the waste. Then maybe we can talk about LPFM, then integration will make sense, then land use will make sense, then we can talk about